Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. After studying the history of the UFO phenomenon for many years now, I've come to realize that one of the reasons they could be here is because they're concerned about what we might do to them in the future. And I want to start off by reading a little passage from Lou Elizondo's new book, Imminent. This is from my favorite chapter, chapter 16, The Aha Moment. And it says on page 167, if we had the power to do what the UAP do, we would likely first use it to make war. After all, we have a history of being a very violent species and annihilating anything we perceive as a threat. As such, we may be perceived as a potential threat to them. Of course, the them he's talking about is the extraterrestrial presence. And he might be right. Now, of course, this is all hypothesis, but and it's something that we've talked about before on this show. But today we're going to get into it a little bit more. When you really think about it, you look at the history of this. Of course, as we all know, 1947 seems to be the signature year when they showed up in force. All the sightings. I mean, in the summer months alone, there were just thousands of UFO sightings all of a sudden after years and years of, some intermittent reports, not that many. There was the great airship mystery of 1896 and 1897, where there were like hundreds and hundreds of sightings of craft floating through the skies. But a lot of those cases actually turned out to be hoaxes, but some of them I believe were real. And I also believe what was real in 1897 was the alleged crash in Aurora, Texas, where something came down from the sky and an alien creature was found. It was killed in that crash, and it was buried in the local Aurora cemetery by the residents there. I believe I believe that happened. But for the most part, before 1947, there really wasn't a lot. And then during World War II, there were a lot of Foo Fighter sightings throughout the early 40s into the mid 40s. Fighter pilots over the skies of Europe saw weird glowing lights following their planes. I think what was happening before 1947 was surveillance, that we were under surveillance by these things. And then starting in 1947, I think there was a serious reconnaissance program initiated by these beings. And now there's some other kind of I think they're beyond that now, and I think they're at another stage. They know all they need to know about us, and they're just preparing for when we go too far. You think about it, the 1994 aerial school incident that happened in Arua, Zimbabwe, when all those 60 plus school children on recess, 10:30 a.m. in the morning, are out there playing near the school, and a flying saucer lands, and alien creatures exit the craft, and all these kids see these alien beings, and one of them communicates telepathically with a handful of these kids, and they put into their minds images of destruction and basically tell them that technology is bad. To me, that sounds like a warning to us, to the adults. How could we not believe these little kids? These little kids would be incapable of conspiring to make up a story like this, and they're basically using our children to warn us about technology and what this might mean. It's going to lead to destruction. I think that's the message. And so Elizondo's assertion in that book, the hypothesis, or excuse me, not assertion, his hypothesis, it could, that could be what is the case. And I thought this before, actually, myself. A lot of us do. We wonder what their purpose is here. And it could be because they're concerned about our progress technologically. And if at some point we're going to reach their level, just look at, in my lifetime alone, I think about what it was like in the 1970s to what it's like now. We had 12 channels on TV back then. And, now look at, there's the internet, there's cell phones, there's all this stuff. Electric cars. We had nothing like that back then. That stuff would have seemed like science fiction. It would have been science fiction. So we are advancing very quickly technologically when you really think about it. But I do think before, when you study this, the clues are all there, and I want to go over some of these, some of the reasons why I think this could be the case, and why Elizondo, actually, he was talking about science. He was during where he got that idea from Hal Puthoff, basically, the scientist. Him and some of Elizondo's team, when Elizondo was still working with the government, were talking about this, and Hal Puthoff put these, brought forward some of these ideas. And anyway, I want to go to, this is an article, well, it's a small little segment from a book from Jenny Randles and Peter Huff, The Complete Book of UFOs, published in 1996. And this is The Three Wise Men, this little segment is called. And it says here, Henry Thompson, a professional artist who has traveled around the world, has a photographic memory which allows him to commit to canvas with absolute accuracy scenes he witnessed decades ago. It also enables Henry to remember in vivid detail an incident from his childhood. That incident, by the way, occurred in Lancashire, England, back in 1926. So let's go to this article here. It says, one evening in November 1926, Henry had been playing hide and seek with his pals. In their version of the game, half the group hid while the rest counted to 50 and then split up to begin searching. Grudgingly, Henry had to leave the other boys because it was his bedtime. As he lay under the covers, he could hear the others outside still playing, and he wanted to join them. He quickly dressed, then stealthily crept out through the back door to join his friends. This time he was one of the seekers and volunteered to search the backs of Eustace Street and nearby Woodgate Street. The backyards of the terraced houses all looked the same, dark and spooky, except where a chink of light spilled out through imperfectly closed curtains. As he walked down Eustace Street, something caught his eye in the yard of number 21. He stopped and peeped around the open gate. What confronted him was to remain indelibly etched on his memory forever. The light was from the scullery window spilled out into the yard. Standing there, peering into the house, were three figures, and they did not look human. They were turned away from the boy, who stared in amazement. Two of them were around 5'8", but the third, which stood in the middle, was several inches taller. They wore helmets and silver gray suits ridged in thick padded horizontal bands, plus black boots. Tubes from a box mounted on each figure's back fed into the neck of the helmet. Perhaps some small noise made by the boy alerted the figures, but they suddenly spun around. Three owl-like faces stared down at him. Their heads, or helmets, were doorknob-shaped, with two black slit eyes, no mouth, but a vertical slit where their nose should be. A loud gargling or mumbling sound issued from the tall one, and the three advanced toward Henry. Henry ran home as fast as his legs could carry him. His parents thought his terror was due to being caught after slipping out of the house. And his story of three men in diver suits was met with disbelief, but Henry persisted, and over the coming months, his family came to realize that something very peculiar indeed had happened to their little boy. Eventually, his mother referred to the encounter as a visitation from the three wise men, a conclusion that Henry feels is a million miles from the truth. Well, I want to talk about that because they were wearing helmets. And it seems like, a lot of the early encounters with these creatures, they're always wearing helmets. And I find that interesting because, encounters, after that, like even the Betty and Barney Hill case, for instance, in 1961, and a lot of alien abductions throughout the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and so on and so forth, and moving forward. These beings were not wearing helmets, but it seems like a lot of these early encounters, like in 1926, for instance, was that surveillance going on at that time? They were just checking us out. They were just interested in how we lived, or if indeed these were aliens that young Henry had seen. But when you think about it, there were a lot of other cases, like, for instance, the 1954 French wave. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of people had seen UFOs, and a lot of sightings also included seeing little men, and a lot of times these little men were wearing helmets. One of the most famous incidents happened in 1954, from 1954 in France, was that of Marius D. Wilde, who saw a craft landed on railroad tracks near his house, and he also saw these little beings, and he described them this way. This is from Graham Rendell's The French UFO Wave of 1954, which, by the way, is an excellent, excellent book, and I highly recommend it. Here's what it says here. It says, and this is during, in 1980, Marius was writing about his encounter from 1954, and it says, what I discovered had nothing in common with smugglers. Two beings like I had never seen before, barely 3 or 4 meters from me, just behind the palisade, which alone separated me from them. They were walking one behind the other in the direction of the dark mass that I had noticed on the railroad tracks. The dark mass was this craft. One of them, the one walking in front, turned toward me. The beam of my lamp caught its face, a reflection of glass or metal. I had the distinct impression that his head was encased in a diving helmet. The two beings were dressed in suits that looked like those used by divers. They were also very small in stature, probably less than 1 meter, but extremely broad-shouldered, and the helmet protecting their heads seemed enormous to me. I saw their legs, small, although proportionate to their size, it seemed to me, but on the other hand, I saw no arms. I don't know if they had any. So that was a description from Marius de Wilde in 1954, and a lot of encounters with these beings in that time period were of these creatures wearing helmets. You see a lot of that in the earlier reports, the earliest encounters with these beings. They were wearing helmets. That's because what might have been going on there, they just weren't acclimated yet to this atmosphere, or maybe they just didn't have these creatures, or whoever's in charge of these creatures, say these ones that Marius de Wilde encountered were biological robots, like many believe the gray aliens are biological robots in service to the mantis aliens. So they weren't ready for this. They couldn't survive on this planet perhaps at that time in the 20s and into the 50s. They just weren't ready yet. So during this period of surveillance and then reconnaissance, a lot of these encounters involved creatures that had helmets on their heads. And even into the late 50s, for instance, in that one of the famous alien abduction encounters, the one involving Antonio Villas-Boas from Brazil, which wasn't reported on until after the Betty and Barney Hill incident, even though it took place 4 years before the Betty and Barney Hill incident in 1961. But in 1957, he was a farmer at the time, this Antonio Villas-Boas. He later went on to become an attorney. But at the time he was farming at night because it was too hot in the day, and he saw him and his brother were seeing UFOs at night while they're out there farming. And then one night he was working by himself on a tractor, and he saw a UFO again, but he was by himself this time, and it turned out to be some sort of an egg-shaped craft. At first it looked like a star, and then it came toward him, and then he realized it was an egg-shaped object. And I just want to read a little segment this is from UFO AC Research Group. I'll leave the links for all of this stuff so you can check it out for yourself. Anyway, he saw what looked like a star, but then it started moving closer to him, and in a matter of moments, it turned into a glowing UFO, an egg-shaped object that was rushing at me so fast that it was over the tractor before I had time to think about what to do. Suddenly, the UFO stopped about 50 meters above my head. The tractor and the field were lit up as brightly as on a sunny afternoon. The tractor's headlights were completely absorbed by the brilliant light red glow. I was terribly frightened because I had no idea what it could be. First, I started the tractor and wanted to get out of there, but its speed was too slow compared to the speed of the glowing object. To jump off the tractor and run across a plowed field is, at best, to break your leg. While I was hesitating in making a decision, the UFO moved slightly and stopped again, about 10 to 15 meters from the tractor. Then Villas-Boas slowly lowered himself to the ground. The UFO moved closer and closer. Finally, I could make out that it was an unusual, almost circular machine with small red holes. A huge red spotlight shone in my face, blinding me as the object came down. And there's an image here, a drawing of the craft that he saw. Now, some debunkers out there say it resembles Sputnik, but Sputnik is incapable of doing the maneuvers that the object that Villas-Boas saw. So that's completely absurd. Anyway, continuing, it says, I could now get a very good look at the shape of the car. He calls this craft a car. The UFO looked like an elongated egg with 3 spikes in front. Their color could not be determined as they were buried in the red light. At the top, something that also glowed red was spinning very fast. The color changed as the number of revolutions of the rotating part decreased. At least that was my impression. The rotating part gave the impression of a saucer or a flat dome. Whether it really looked like that or whether it was only the rotation that gave the impression, I do not know. After all, it did not stop its movement after the object landed. I noticed the main details later, of course, because I was too excited at first. I lost the last vestige of my composure when, a few meters from the ground, 3 metal pipes appeared from the bottom of the object like a tripod. These were metal legs on which, of course, the entire weight of the car fell when landing. I didn't want to wait any longer. The tractor stood with the engine running for the entire time. I gave it gas, turned in the opposite direction from the object, and made an attempt to escape. But after a couple of meters, the engine stalled and the headlights went out. I could not understand the reason for this, since the ignition was on and the headlights were working properly. The engine wouldn't start. Then I jumped out of the tractor and started running. But it was too late, because after a few steps, someone grabbed my arm. It was a small, oddly dressed creature that reached to my shoulder. In utter desperation, I turned on it and delivered a blow that knocked it off balance. The unknown man let go of me and fell on his face. I tried to run again, but was immediately seized by three equally incomprehensible creatures. They lifted me off the ground, holding me tightly by my arms and legs. I tried to kick back, but in vain. Then I called out loudly for help, cursing them and demanding to be released. They were either surprised or curious at my cry, for on the way to their car, they stopped every time I opened my mouth and stared intently into my face, but they did not loosen their grip. Anyway, Villas-Boas described these beings as being 5 feet tall, humanoid, and they were wearing gray coveralls and helmets. And they had hoses on the helmets, just like in that case from 1926, leading to some sort of a backpack. So, I mean, you look at this, and obviously what happened with Villas-Boas, he was brought on that craft, and they put him in some room where there was a gas released, and he was choking on it. They put this stuff on his skin, this substance. He didn't know what it was, some sort of a substance. And then some short humanoid woman, female, came in and basically ended up having sex with this woman. And then they released them, and none of them spoke any language. It was like grunting sounds. This woman, this creature that he was forced to lay with, all she did was grunt, and then they just left him there in the field and took off. So a lot of these cases, early cases, it involved beings that are wearing helmets that people would run into. So you have to wonder, is that what was happening? They didn't have the right biological robots yet to provide service to them, to the ones in charge, perhaps maybe the mantis beings, and so they had to use protection. They had to wear suits and masks and helmets so they wouldn't die. Is that what was going on? Because in cases after that, like for instance the Betty and Barney Hill incident from 1961, the creatures that they encountered were not wearing any helmets or anything to that effect when they were dragged onto the craft. And so you have to wonder about these things, and I do, and I think that what might be what the situation might be is that these beings are, it started off as surveillance, and then it led to a period of reconnaissance, and plus they were preparing themselves. Okay, we got to take care of this because this is going to be a mess if we don't do something now, and they had to acclimate, they had to create their new type of aliens that could handle our atmosphere, and is that what was going on? And now here we are. Because the beings that we're dealing with now don't seem to be wearing any helmets anymore. I mean, you hear cases like that here and there sometimes, but for the most part, it's not. They're walking around completely unprotected. You see the people who encounter them see their heads, and they're not covered with any helmet. But initially they were, and it seems like in the in the 50s, into the early 60s maybe, and then they weren't. But after that, there were some, to be fair, there were some cases like that. But you have to wonder if that's what was going on. You have to also consider that the reason they're here is because of us, that maybe we are the bad guys in this story. It would be like us, like say the human race at some point, we get a grip. We finally get a grip and we stop war and we stop murder for the most part. We do our best, right? We finally come together as a species and we stop the hatred that we have for each other for stupid, unknown, dumb reasons. The racism and the hatred and the murder and the killings and all that stuff. Say we get to a point where the human race finally gets over that hump and starts to live in peace somehow, right? And we start traveling the galaxy. We start exploring other worlds, and we come to a world where it's very reminiscent of 1940 Nazi Germany, and the entire planet is getting taken over by some force, and that's just killing each other because of whatever reason, out of hatred and bigotry and racism, or religion or whatever, right? And what we would be concerned about that if they were like if we found a planet like that and it's evolved to a point where it looks very reminiscent of 1940 Nazi Germany, we're going to be concerned, right? We're going to start keeping tabs, because if that civilization continues to evolve into a more technologically advanced civilization like we are, right, then that's going to be very concerning for us, because then they might come after us. And that's what these alien beings might be thinking. Maybe that's why they're here. And we're not getting any better here. I mean, we're just not. We're just not. I mean, look at what we're doing. What's happening in the world right now? We just never learned any lessons. We just never learned any lessons. I mean, these countries are attacking each other. There's women and children dying all the time. Innocent people are getting killed still to this day. And the people in charge, the people at the top, the billionaires, they seem to want this. I mean, that's what it seems like. We're out of control. The human race is out of control. Right. And if these alien creatures, which we now know for a fact are here, which we actually have, the human race has the proof for itself. We don't need some secret government agency to tell us the proof. Right. We've seen it. I've been talking about it on this channel for a long time. We are out of control. We're not figuring things out. I mean, I mean, right now, look what's going on in this world. The death and destruction on a constant basis, it doesn't end. It doesn't end. And it's not getting any better. And I don't think it ever will. I don't see how it will. There's just too much hatred in this world. The human race is completely, absolutely flawed. And I don't think we're ever going to get any better the way it looks to me, from my viewpoint, from where I'm sitting, right? I don't see us getting any better. We're getting worse. We're just as bad as we've always been. Right, there are some people. Of course, there are good people in this world that don't like the way things are going, and they want to stop it. But we can't. Well, how are we going to stop it when it seems the setup we have here, it allows it allows for this to happen. We just can't stop. We can't stop these people. It's money talks. It's all about greed, money, and power. It's just power trips for people, because we know good. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's what's happening. Look what's going on in this world. It's just disgusting to me, and we're never gonna learn. We just haven't. And we're being observed, right? And I think it's beyond reconnaissance at this point. I think we were surveilled for a long time, and then there was some reconnaissance, and now there's going to be action taken against us at some point. I think so. I most certainly think so. Because look at we how would we treat other people, other beings from other planets? What would we do to them? Look what we do to ourselves. We kill ourselves. So that's where I fear that's what's happening here. That could be the reason. And just think about it. The reverse engineering program, the crash retrievals and reverse engineering. Well, why are we doing it? Because we want to reverse engineer that technology and use it for war against somebody else. That's what it's all about. It's all about power and greed and money and destruction and murder and just idiocy. The human race sucks. Let me tell you something, folks. The human race sucks. We suck. And if this is what's going to happen, if we get destroyed because of this, right, then we deserve it. We deserve it. We deserve to be blown out of this solar system. Right, we don't deserve to be around anymore, because we would pose a threat to any other intelligence race out there that's looking at us with fearful eyes. That's what this could be about. Now, again, all this is hypothesis, but I do believe my commentary on the human race is accurate, because how could you deny it? How could you deny it? It doesn't end. People just hate each other for whatever reason, because of the color of their skin. There's all of this racism that still continues to go on and raging in this world. It's just raging. Over people killing each other over religion. It's absolutely insane. There's people in the Pentagon that don't want to tell the world the truth about this presence because of religious beliefs. That's insanity. But that's the human race for you, folks. That's the human race for you. And where do you think this is heading? We're heading to it's hell in a handbasket. We're going down the tubes, and I know for a fact that there's something here, and it has to be. You have to be embarrassed. It's an embarrassment. Actually, it's an embarrassment. With human race is an embarrassment, right? To life, because we don't respect it. We don't respect life. We don't respect each other. None. We don't. We just don't. It's all about hatred and racism. I'm sick and tired of it. And you should be too. The whole world should be sick and tired of this. Wake up already. Why are you? I don't understand what's happening with people. I don't understand why people think the way they do, and why it's so necessary to kill other people and take over people's countries, kick people out of their lands, and all of that stuff. I'm so tired of it. How could anybody sit there and just think that this? It's not going to have any sort of consequences, especially when you know that there is an alien presence here. And I do know that there's something here. Everyone should know it at this point. The proof is there. We already have it. We've been showing it to you on this channel for months now. There's no excuse anymore. But that's the way it is, folks. And if that's what this is about, then we're going to get exactly what we deserve. We're going to get, in the end, we're going to get what we deserve. That's what's going to happen. And I'm starting to think this could be this could be the reason why they're here. They see how we're advancing technologically. They see how we treat each other, right? They see how we treat each other. If we treat each other this way, I mean, from their point of view, they're going to think, oh, if they're treating themselves like this, what are they going to do to us when they find out about us? That's what's going on. That could be the reason. That could be what's going on here, folks. So people should start thinking that way about this, because that could be what's happening here. That could be the reason behind all of this, right? Because they see us and we are dangerous. We are very dangerous, and they're waiting for the right time. At some point, right? They're going to probably make some sort of, maybe that's what the big change is, right? That's what David Jacobs has been talking about. The change that's coming is, okay, this ain't working out, and we can't take any chances. So, see you later, sayonara. That could be where we're heading, folks. So I think people should start really thinking about life that way, and existence. Actually, the people start thinking about existence. And if we do get blown away by these creatures, right, then we deserve it. Then, obviously, I can't imagine some if they didn't do anything yet, right? Then that means that maybe they're giving us a chance. I mean, they've given us warnings. They show up over our military installations. They shut down, activate our nuclear missiles at our missile silos, right? They've been trying to send us a message, and we're not taking it. We're not getting it. Instead, what do? We just keep killing each other in these wars. That's what we're doing. It's just a sad state of affairs, a very sad state of affairs, as far as I could see. And I don't see any end in sight to any of it. It's never going to end. I mean, in the United States alone, there's the fighting within the country itself. It's ugly. It's ugly. The words are ugly. I mean, everybody here should be tired of it. But there's some people who love it. They just love the hatred. They love hating other people because they're other people. That's how it is in this United States. That's what it is. Speaking of the United States, tomorrow, there's going to be 4 people testifying at this House Oversight Committee hearing. It's actually 2 subcommittees: the Cybersecurity, Information Technology and Government Information, and National Security, the Border and Foreign Affairs. And we're going to have Tim Gallaudet, the retired United States Navy Rear Admiral. We're going to have Lou Elizondo, of course, former DOD official. Michael Gold, Chief Growth Officer, Redwire Corporation, and former National Aeronautics and Space Administration Associate Administrator, as well as Michael Schellenberger, the reporter and the founder of Public, of the website Public, who always has some news on UFOs. So I have plans on doing a live show when that's on tomorrow, and so if you want to join me for that, please do. I'll be starting probably a half hour before the hearing begins, and so you could join me live tomorrow on YouTube for that, and also I will put also be uploading that stream to Spotify after it concludes. And there are some statements that have been released by these people, by the people who are testifying, from what I understand. And I'll probably go over some of the things they provide in their statements, and as well as some other commentary before it begins. And then we'll sit through the hearing and then offer a reaction when it's over. It's a good move. At least we're getting closer to disclosure. I think, again, after everything I was just talking about here, I think we need to get closer. We need disclosure. The world needs to open its eyes to what's happening here, right? We need to open our eyes and realize we're being observed. We're being surveilled. There's reconnaissance been going on here. I mean, they could, because of the way we are, right? They might be very concerned about what we might do to them at some point, because we are advancing. Where are we going to be 100 years from now? It's not taking long. We're advancing very quickly technologically. We are advancing extremely quickly. Where are we going to be 100 years from now? 200 years? Are they going to allow us to get to that point? Because if they did, they might be fools. They would be fools. Because then we might just go to their planet and start doing the same kind of stuff we do to our own on this planet. So I think people need to start thinking about that, and I think this is that's probably the biggest reason for having disclosure is because of how we treat each other. We need to take a long, hard look at ourselves in the mirror and wake up already. We need to stop. We need to stop this violence and this hatred and all of it. I mean, we shouldn't be living. We shouldn't exist this way. Doesn't make any sense. I mean, we are advanced enough at this point where people shouldn't be no people starving. There should be no people getting killed by bombs anymore or machine guns or anything like that. What the hell are we doing here? What's the point of all of this craziness? But I don't know. But some people seem to love it. They live for it. I don't know if it's because they hate their own lives so much that they just want to cause problems for other people or what it is. I have no idea what it is. But the human race needs to wake up from this disaster that we just continue. It's a disaster. The way this has been going. It just really is, and it's sad. Anyway, I want to say thank you all for joining me today. Until next time.